What's the most unlikely friend you've ever made? My dog Rudy was a rescue pit bull who had been abused. He was terrified of people, especially men. For 3 years, the only humans he trusted were me and my wife. Then, our elderly next-door neighbor Pete lost his wife of 50 years. Pete started spending all day sitting in his backyard, staring at nothing. Sometimes I'd hear him crying through our shared fence. Rudy would perk up his ears and whine whenever he heard Pete sobbing. One morning, I let Rudy out and he immediately ran to the fence. Instead of barking like he normally did at strangers, he just sat there, tail wagging. Pete noticed and came over. To my shock, Rudy didn't run away. "Beautiful dog," Pete said, his voice rough from crying. "Mind if I say hello?" I was nervous, but agreed. I opened our gate connecting our yards, ready to grab Rudy if needed, but Rudy just trotted over and gently put his head in Pete's lap. Pete broke down sobbing, hugging Rudy while my normally fearful dog just stayed still, letting this stranger hold him. After that day, Pete would ask to borrow Rudy for a few hours. They developed this incredible routine. Every morning at 9 a.m., Rudy would scratch at our back door. I'd let him out and he'd run straight to Pete's yard where Pete would be waiting with treats. They'd spend hours together. Pete would garden while Rudy followed him around, carrying tools in his mouth. They'd nap together in Pete's hammock. Pete even started cooking again, but only so he could share his meals with Rudy. One day, Pete had a fall in his garden. Rudy ran to our house, barking and scratching frantically until we followed him. We found Pete unconscious and called an ambulance. The doctor said if we hadn't found him so quickly, he might not have made it. While Pete was in the hospital, Rudy refused to eat. He'd just lie by the fence, waiting. After 3 days, I couldn't stand seeing him so depressed. I snuck him into the hospital in a large duffel bag. When we got to Pete's room, Rudy jumped out and rushed to the bed, putting his head on Pete's lap just like that first day. The nurses saw, but instead of kicking us out, they were amazed. Rudy's presence seemed to speed up Pete's recovery. Pete started physical therapy, determined to get strong enough to go home to Rudy. The therapists said they'd never seen an 80-year-old man work so hard. Every time he wanted to quit, he'd look at the photo of Rudy we'd put by his bed. A month later, Pete came home. Rudy heard the car pull up and started howling with joy. As Pete walked unsteadily to his yard, Rudy gentle walked beside him, letting Pete lean on him for support. They fell back into their old routine, but now Pete would talk to Rudy about his late wife Sarah. He'd tell stories about their life together while Rudy listened intently. Sometimes Pete would cry, and Rudy would lick his tears away. One morning, Pete didn't come out at 9 a.m. Rudy got extremely agitated, so I called Pete's daughter. She had taken him to the emergency room in the night. His cancer had returned. This time, the doctor said there was nothing they could do. Pete asked to come home for his final days. His daughter hired nurses, but the only caregiver Pete really wanted was Rudy. Rudy refused to leave Pete's side. He'd alert the nurses when Pete needed pain medication before Pete even asked. He'd growl at anyone who tried to move him from his spot next to Pete's bed. The night Pete passed away, Rudy knew before anyone else. He started howling, a sound I'd never heard him make before. When the nurses came in, Pete was gone, with one hand resting on Rudy's head. We expected Rudy to be devastated, but something amazing happened. Pete's daughter was going through his things and found a letter addressed to me. Inside was legal paperwork Pete had prepared, asking us to let his daughter to take Rudy. She lived alone on a farm and had been struggling since losing her mom and now her dad. Pete wrote that he knew Rudy had a gift for healing broken hearts. It was hard, but we honored Pete's wish. Now Rudy spends his days helping Pete's daughter run her animal rescue. She says he has a special talent for calming the most traumatized dogs.